Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Jenny White.
How are you?
Good. I've got a whole new meme series set up for you. I know I'm supposed to be working on the other
yes,
meme
you
series,
are, buddy.
but I have a whole meme series just for you, which is going to be like Braveheart, his head cut off, your head put on, Jenny the Gray, on his chest plate there, fighting the establishment, Jenny the Gray on Braveheart's body. There we go.
Okay, seriously, that's cracking me up. You have to do that now. Now that you actually said it,
I'm going to.
You better come up with that.
We need to make a little animated character,
How did I get stuck with you for a partner? Because you're just nuts.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think you're completely nuts.
I don't know.
So I think Rumble is working this morning. It actually came on. It was all the right thing. I'm kind of a little bit freaked out about it. Like, wow, it worked. So anybody who wants to tune over to Rumble, it's actually working. So yay, yes.
Good.
Okay, so we have a great guest this morning. Very much looking forward to talking about this. We're never going to get anywhere without energy. It's just not going to happen. I mean, and you've talked about all of the various things that we Bitcoin processing and all of the AI stuff, and it's going to require all this energy.
Yeah.
And not that either of us like either of those things, but we do like our power, especially when it gets down to -12 here in Oklahoma. And we've actually had power failures in California. They have brownouts. We had one here. Remember, that was 2 years ago when it got so cold and the Southwest Power Pool failed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's something I think we need to really talk about because we have a green energy thing going on right now because the climate and all of that.
And as a disclaimer, I don't work in the oil and gas field in any capacity, but I have no problem saying that the technology and just the wildcatting and everything that has to do with the oil and gas field has literally built this world the way that we know it. I mean, built it. I mean, it is the backbone of literally almost every single industry in one way or another. And to just subside that into this, all the green, which we've talked about the green stuff, multiple episodes, but I just want people to, they need to recognize, all their little designer clothes, all their, fancy cars, all their stuff. It's all built on oil and gas industry.
That's correct. So I think maybe we ought to bring Mr. Chad McDougal this morning in, and he can tell us a little bit more about that. So good morning, Mr. McDougal. How are you?
Good morning, Jenny. Good morning, Michael. Doing good. How are you?
Awesome. Well, we are very glad that you came on this morning because, as you heard, we're not green fans.
Sure.
We want the world to go up in a blazing.
Well, I think
we're advocates for that.
I think oil and gas gives you a pretty reliable source of energy every day, day in, day out, without all the federal subsidies. So
yeah. So, and that's I think what we need to talk about, because there are so many people who, well, they don't understand, they don't get involved in politics, and they don't, which is sad because, I mean, I think you of all people could tell us, because you're the chairman of the Oklahoma Petroleum Alliance. Did I say it correctly?
The Petroleum Alliance of Oklahoma. Yes, that's correct.
Yes. So wouldn't you say that oil and gas is political? Could you say that?
I don't know if I'd go to political. I think it's vital. I think it makes the world go round. I think
it absolutely
provides people with a quality of life. It provides integral funding to the government. We pay over $1 billion of gross production tax every year in, year out. I think that we average paying about $900 million of gross production tax for the last 20 years.
So let's stop right there, because I'll be honest with you. I know about that because I've lived in Oklahoma 61 years, but I have no idea what that means. Can you tell us what gross production tax actually is?
So oil and gas is a unique thing in that most people, when they pay tax, they pay income tax, on what they make. The oil and gas industry, we pay gross production tax right off the top. So when we sell a barrel of oil or an MCF of gas at the wellhead, we pay, in essence, like an extraction tax to the state. And it's about 7%. It ranges from 5 to 7%, whether it's a new well or existing production, but basically just say 7% off the top. So we pay that whether we're making money, losing money, whatever it is, and we pay that first. And then we're expected to pay income tax and all those other things. So it would be the equivalent if you had a restaurant and you were the restaurant owner. Every time you settled a tab for $25 or $50 or whatever it is, 7% of that goes straight to the state, no matter what. It's very unique. I mean, I think we're one of the few industries that pay a tax like that, that's not income driven. So,
and you also pay corporate tax on the top of that because you have your own oil and gas company, right?
We pay corporate tax. We pay ad valorem tax. I mean, the gross production tax is in lieu of ad valorem on production. But if we have equipment associated with the wells or facilities or those things, then they pay ad valorem tax. When I told you $900 million on average GPT, the industry pays about another $400 million of ad valorem tax on average.
Now, let's make sure people understand what ad valorem tax is. Ad valorem is property tax. So are you saying that where you have a well, you pay taxes? Is that how that works?
So the tax is driven by the production. And then if there's other equipment that's not directly, like the tanks and all those things, the wellhead, they're included in that in lieu of. But if you had certain equipment that sat on the location, you would pay ad valorem on that equipment. And then you start paying it on pipelines and the midstream and refiners and all those companies that have stuff, they pay as well.
And is there federal tax on top of that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're subject to federal income tax. We're subject to state income tax. We're subject to all those things. I mean, about every kind of tax you can imagine, we pay. We pay more taxes than anybody. I mean, there's no question about it.
So I'm curious then, how about you do have some private investors or don't have private investors?
It really ranges by companies because you have the public companies who, they have publicly traded stock.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have private companies that it may be like in our situation, we're a family owned company that's been around for almost 40 years and we're internally funded from, investment in building over time. And then some people have, you hear the discussion about private equity. Some people may have partners inside their corporation. There's a lot of different things that could go on in that situation. But
I'm driving this line of questioning, defendant, for a reason.
Sure.
And hold on just a second. Heather says, has that always been the case? I mean, have you always had to pay that many taxes?
Oh yeah. The only new tax that's out there now is this new waste emissions charge from the Inflation Reduction Act. That's like a new tax for us on methane. But yeah, we've always paid those kind of taxes.
Oh, and I forgot because you have federal regulations on the top of that. But as a producer, you're not usually into that. It's more the people who are manufacturing the goods from the oil and gas that end up paying those. Or not?
What tax? No, I mean,
like for example, the methane tax. But do you pay that? I thought it was when it was shipped to the.
No, we are 100% subject to the possibility of methane tax, and that's a little complicated, and it's based on the amount of methane that you emit, and there's a formula on methane intensity. But yes, we're 100% subject to the methane tax. We're the only ones as an industry that are subject to a methane tax, even though there are others that produce methane. So
let's go back up just a second and add the ad valorem tax that you pay, just like any of us who we all pay ad valorem tax, right? We pay property tax. So
correct.
Those taxes then go to fund the same things that most other people do, public schools.
So
right?
So ad valorem tax is more of a county level tax.
Okay.
Whereas gross production tax is a statewide tax. So when you pay gross production tax, that goes into the general revenue fund, or there's certain formulas depending on if it's oil or gas, how it's directed into like state education and some of those things. I think on the gross production tax, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think it's $100 or $200 million right off the top out of those production taxes goes into education taxes.
Okay. So now let me just switch the questioning here a little bit. So, I've done some study. I'm a biologist by trade, so I'm not a geologist like you, but I've been doing some research, and the way I understand it is that wind and solar both. So let's just hit wind and solar right at the same time. Wind and solar both. They do a lot of private investing. There's a lot of private investment that goes with the green stuff, the Green New Deal stuff. So there's private investing in that. But the main thing is they get lots and lots of subsidies from the federal government and the state government. Am I wrong?
You're exactly correct. I mean, and that's really the major issue at play is that the state of Oklahoma back in 2003 created the zero emission tax credit. And it was like 1/2 cent a kilowatt hour, which sometimes it's easier to talk about things in megawatt hours, but so that'd be $5 a megawatt hour. And then when the Inflation Reduction Act was passed in 2021, I believe, then there are levels of different production tax credits in there that I think they can range up to like $27.50 a megawatt hour. So 2.75 cents a kilowatt hour. I know there's a lot of numbers, but to be clear on this, the state zero emission tax credit, it was in effect until 2017, and it had blown out, the amount of generation and the fee associated with that. It was over $100 million a year. The state ended that tax, and then they sunsetted the state incentive, and I think it'll finally sunset in 2027. So in essence,
good.
Everybody was allowed to have 10 years of that zero emission tax credit, and it was for projects that were installed prior to 2017, more or less. And then
you mentioned a tax credit for oil and gas, though. I didn't hear that.
No, we don't. We don't get it. We don't get a tax credit.
So you're just paying a lot of taxes, and let's make sure we're clear. So where do tax credits come from? Everybody,
well, I mean, at the state level, at the state level, the tax credits are the difference between a tax deduction and a tax credit. A tax deduction goes against your income and reduces your liability.
Yeah.
So if you owed $100,000 or you made $100,000 and you had a $10,000 deduction, they would calculate your tax on $90,000. A tax credit is a dollar for dollar return against your tax liability. So in essence, if you got a $10,000 tax credit, that's $10,000 of cash in your pocket. I mean, it's much different than a deduction.
So how many of those do you get?
None.
Oh, none.
We don't get tax credits. We get deductions.
Oh, I see. Okay. So
now, to be fair, I think there's
windmills do and solar do.
Right. That's right. And to be fair, I think at times there's some sort of manufacturer's tax credit or incentive out there, but most producers don't see that. I mean, that's more at the manufacturing level. Mm-hmm. But for the everyday producer, no, I just get deductions and pay taxes.
Okay. So let me ask you this then. So in your business, I don't suppose you have people going to courthouses, looking up land leases or who owns property or putting money into drilling or all kinds of the different things that are now getting more expensive to do. So I guess what I'm saying is you also put in quite a bit of money, I'm sure, to be able to run your business, to have to find the oil and all of that kind of stuff. So that's on top of all.
We're a massively capital intense business. I mean, and
so that you know, yeah. I graduated high school in the 80s, so I remember Penn Square Bank really well.
Yeah, I mean, when
Yeah.
to put it in perspective, I mean, oil and gas has about a $55 billion economic impact in Oklahoma. I mean, we're 1 out of 10 jobs in the state. So you're right. I mean, an oil and gas company, I mean, we've got our company is relatively small. I mean, we have, about 50 employees. We've got people that work on contract in the field that pump the wells, production foremen. We've got people that, service companies that haul the water, purchasers that haul the oil, people that repair the pumping units, that do pipeline work. Yeah, we hire land brokers. I mean, to do new work, to drill new wells, pay for oil and gas lease bonuses. We go out and drill wells, hire service companies in Oklahoma. It's a never ending thing, and it creates a lot of jobs, and it creates a lot of jobs locally.
Okay. So I want to contrast that just 1 second, but I do want to ask, we did have a question. Has oil and gas ever received any government subsidies, or are you just taxed to Pluto and back?
Well, I think the common thing you see is that people refer to subsidies, and it's so distorted at times because we have tax deductions. We pay intangible drilling cost. We have an intangible drilling cost in the tax code where it's just a depreciation, essentially accelerated depreciation. So.
But that's normal for every business. I mean, every business gets to take depreciation.
Every business takes depreciation. Yeah. That's right. And so I think it's distorted sometimes when you see these budgets come up and they're talking about billions of dollars of subsidies to oil and gas. Last time I checked, the government's not writing me any checks. And I've been in this business for about 35 years, and I don't remember getting a lot of checks from them. I get deductions against my income, and if I don't have any income, those deductions aren't worth anything.
Well, let me ask you this, since we're on that subsidy side. In your opinion, would, or I guess even could, the entire renewable space even exist without all that government intervention in one way or another?
I think in large scale it would not exist. I mean, because the part we kind of skip past is in the Inflation Reduction Act, the tax credit that they're getting it's almost $30 a megawatt hour. Understand that the price of electricity in the Southwest Power Pool on any given day could be, $15, $25 a megawatt hour, and it can go higher, no doubt. But to put that in perspective, they're getting a tax credit that is equal to the price of the product. It's in some cases, it's more than equal to the price of the product. And so in essence, it would be like an oil and gas producer. Oil's trading around $65, $70 today. Gas is around, $2 to $2.50. So that would be like me getting a $70 a barrel tax credit.
Wow.
Or a, $3 an MCF tax credit. Wow. I don't think I want to emphasize this. I don't think people understand that the Inflation Reduction Act if you look at the goal of it, it is full-scale electrification at the hands of renewables and non-fossil fuels, basically. And those tax credits that are essentially equal to the price of the consumed electricity, if you went to the standard it's driven by some sort of emission standard that I kind of kiddingly say it's like when everybody gets a unicorn in their garage, it'll go away. I mean, it's not going to go away unless it's repealed. And so you, in essence, would be asking the federal taxpayer to pay for all the consumed electricity in the United States as a line on the balance sheet of the government. I mean, that would dwarf some of these things everybody's worried about in the debt. I mean, it's an unsustainable thing to have that credit out there. And I guarantee there's many, many, many projects that would not be built were it not for that credit.
Well, do you know, like either as a program as a whole or in Oklahoma, how much is that subsidy in Oklahoma? Do you know what that number may be?
No, I know exactly. So the credit through about 2020 or actually through 2023, had paid the tax credit. And there was two things going on. There was the zero emission tax credit, and then there was an ad valorem reimbursement that went on through a different section of the law. It's paid out about $1.1 billion
Wow.
to the wind industry during that time. The runoff in that, I told you it's sunsetted out, it's probably about another 130 million. So $1.25 billion of tax credits paid to them. And in the meantime, they're not paying any income tax. They
Wow.
may be paying some ad valorem tax, but part of the ad valorem tax they're paying was subsidized by the state.
Well, it's kind of funny because it makes sense to know why there are so many individual investors in this, because it's just taking money from taxpayers. I mean, they're not doing too very much.
If you're dealing with something that the only way it exists is with the tax credit, and it's not economically viable otherwise, I mean, that would make you question if you should do it. And I understand the concept of saying, well, we're going to provide some tax credit or some sort of incentive for something that's in its experimental stage, or it's beginning. Let's get it off the ground and get it started. I mean, realize in Oklahoma, almost half of the electricity, like about 45% of it, is generated with wind. I mean, when we talk about wind and solar in Oklahoma, solar is negligible in Oklahoma so far. It's trying to get traction and get bigger, but wind is by far the behemoth in the room. I mean, it is. They're not a experimental technology. I mean, you're paying, in essence, you're paying a credit at 100% or more than the price of the product for something that's providing half of the power. I mean,
well, I want to switch directions just a second here. So now you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, because again, like I said, I'm not an expert. This is why we have experts on to ask them questions. So it seems to me that in terms of jobs with wind or solar, because I'm going to kind of stick them together. All right. So you have the manufacturing jobs, right? That's true.
If they manufacture it here.
And that's a good point.
They don't build what do they call Monels, the top of the turbines. I don't believe they build those in Oklahoma. I think Pelco in Tulsa builds poles. But you got to realize in the beginning of the industry, most of this was, when they talked about we're going to spend $1 billion or $200 million building a wind farm, most of the $200 million was outside of the state. I mean, the only real economic activity was the cafes that were feeding the guys that were building these facilities.
Well,
I mean,
let me point
the
out.
turbine comes from out of state. The pole was coming from out of state. The workers were coming from out of state. I mean, when they built it, they left.
Well, and let me point out for people who are watching and may not know. So I've been mayor of a tiny town, and it's very important for us to be able to have income. And if something was produced in the town, then we could have a little bit of tax for that helped us provide that business with electricity and water and that kind of thing, as well as taking care of the rest of the town. Yeah. So when something is built outside of the town or outside of the state, there's no money coming in for that. And
that's right.
And to say that you're actually employing people, which our governor has said numerous times about windmills and solar. Oh, they're great, employers. And, I haven't quite figured out how we're employing anybody there, except for the people who come in and decimate the landscape and pour all of that cement and stick up something that I'm pretty sure is not recyclable. I mean, am I wrong about that? I thought they made these great big things.
You've seen the pictures of the turbine blades that are cut up outside of Sweetwater, Texas, the big, turbine graveyard out there where they cut up the blades and they're not going to decompose and they're going to just sit there. And what do we do with them? I mean, The concrete in the ground, good luck. I mean, they're pouring massive amounts of concrete, and you've seen the steel infrastructure that they put in those holes. It's incredible what they do there. But you're right. I mean, for our oil and gas company, we're predominantly kind of west of I-35 is our area where we're busy. And we've 100% seen the revitalization at different times of Western Oklahoma and all those towns like Elk City and Clinton and Sweetwater, Oklahoma and Woodward and all those places as the industry picks up. And, and we're glad to see those jobs created, and it helps those communities thrive, because for them, it's kind of oil and gas or agriculture, or if they, if the town has some sort of manufacturing built. I think it was in 2016, state did a report on the studying the incentives associated with the zero emission tax credit. And then they did one in 2020. I think in the one in 2016, they said that at that point, the wind industry had created 178 jobs.
Yay! Wow,
and I think when they did their
awesome.
study in 2020, I think they said that the return on the investment for the state for the incentives to that point was 30 cents on the dollar. Now that's a pretty bad investment. You would think when the idea of
we're not even getting a third of our investment back. That's
right. You hit the nail on the
head. Chad, are you going to go out and invest in something that you're a businessman that makes a third of a return on your investment?
No.
Well,
who would do this?
Yeah. Well, to go along in that vein, Chad, I mean, I'm just a numbers finance guy. So, I mean, I'm no expert, but when it comes to business, you said that 45% of that energy is being generated by the wind side. They're literally being completely subsidized almost to the positive. So I think just as a basic common sense, my electric bill should literally be probably 30% less than what it is. I mean, what's the actual, contribution to the electric costs coming down if you've got a company, putting in that much energy that's got no cost?
It's funny that you asked that, because all you ever hear is that renewables are going to make electricity cheaper, right? I mean, that's the kind of the
bill went way up over the winter.
You're right, you did, and so if you look at the electric costs, go back to, let's see here, since 2010, electricity costs in Oklahoma for residential rates have gone up about 35%. Now, somebody would say, "Oh, well, that's because the fuel costs more. Natural gas is an electric generating fuel, right? Natural gas prices have gone down 40%.
Yeah.
So natural gas went down 40%, and the residential rates went up 35%.
Yeah.
So it wasn't gas that made it go up. Well, what went up? Wind generation went up about 900% during that time. And what you're seeing is it's all the cost associated with these wind farms and the transmission infrastructure and all those things is being socialized into the rate base. And, that gets into issues about the SPP and all these other things. But in essence, they're building these projects and there's not adequate capacity for them. And then they claim congestion to the SPP, and then they force OG&E or somebody to build transmission out to them to take the power. And then that gets rolled into the rate base. And so these transmission costs and full-scale electrification costs are getting pushed into the rate base, and they're causing the rates to go up. I sat through a presentation last week where somebody had the national data on electric rates. Same story, up about 40% nationally. And what's not surprising is that the real spike in those rates started around, 2020, 2021, whenever, the Inflation Reduction Act gets pushed through. I mean, the EIA came out with some information just the other day, and they're talking about how rate increases have gone up on a national level, whereas they used to be $2 billion per year across all 50 states. Now that number is around $9 billion per year. I mean, it's just a ballistic increase, and it's going to continue. And it's all these things that are caused by having to basically double build the grid for renewable energy that's not reliable and can't produce all the time.
Well, I have a question for you. I was reading something in some of the governor's propaganda, a press release that he wrote the other day about that he was that Oklahoma generates 63% more energy for Oklahoma than other states do. I can't remember what that. Do you know what I'm talking about here?
I don't. I'm not sure what that means. I
Well,
know this. I
It
know.
was something like we produce more energy than we use in
No,
Oklahoma. I
that
think it
and
was
that.
63% more energy than we use is what we're doing.
Well, I know this. We're a net exporter of electricity. Now think about when I told you we paid $1 billion of outflow, actually $1.25 billion. And to back up on that for just a second, if we would have used natural gas to generate all that electricity, that natural gas would have generated about another $500 million of gross production tax for the state.
Wow.
So the state's about $2 billion in the hole on that deal, and we're a net exporter of electricity. And that's where it starts to become troublesome, because Oklahoma is blessed with a lot of amazing natural resources. We've got oil and gas below our feet. And there is some of the better wind that blows, as we all know, in the western half of the state and all up the Great Plains. But in essence, what's happening is these companies are coming in and they want to invest in Oklahoma so they can generate electricity from wind here and put it on the SPP, the Southwest Power Pool, so they can deliver it to other states that have zero emission mandates and don't have the renewables to deliver on the mandate. So, we're getting used in the process. They're out building these farms. We don't need the electricity here. We're probably more than 30% in excess of our use.
You're aware of the giant power line transmission corridor
the Cimarron Link, I think they call it, the thing from the Oklahoma Panhandle to Tulsa.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So what you're telling me is, and I'm just curious, so help me if I'm wrong. So what you're telling me is there's no reason for Oklahoma to have that. The feds nor nobody else needs to come and evacuate people of their own property to create this Southwest this corridor of transmission lines for Oklahomans, because
it's not as if people in Tulsa are turning the light switch on and there's no electricity. What's the purpose? The purpose is to get the wind electricity from the Oklahoma Panhandle that much closer to the eastern corridor of the United States. It's just, they tried to build this line before. It was called Clean Line, and they were going to build the line from the Oklahoma Panhandle, across Oklahoma, across Arkansas, and link it into the Tennessee Valley Authority. And it got defeated. It's just the same story with a different name and some different authority behind it. But
now this is coming from legislation, correct?
Well, it's at the federal level.
Right. It's coming from
the IRA. Everything's not everything. I shouldn't say everything. Most things involving the renewable industry, they come out of the Inflation Reduction Act. It is, you can call it what you want to call it, but that was the Green New Deal. It was a green giveaway. Green energy equals green dollars in the pockets of the renewable developers.
Yeah, but I want to make sure that we're saying it like it is. So we're taking money from you and giving it to the wind people, and we're taking money from Michael and everybody else in Oklahoma and giving it to people who are creating giant, horrible, ugly,
$2 billion I told
you.
The $2 billion I told you about was from the Oklahoma taxpayer. The Inflation Reduction Act subsidies are from the federal taxpayer. And in a lot of cases, the companies are paying are not even U.S. companies. They're foreign companies. Enel and these folks, they're from foreign countries.
Back up. Say that one more time.
A lot of these companies who are renewable developers are not even U.S. companies; they're foreign companies.
Well, and don't forget, Jenny, when we did the show with Julianne and we were looking at that one company, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Remember, they touted on their website they had a 635% return to their investors, in the last 7-8 years. Remember that. So that's our money going into these people. That's literally just going right into an investor's pocket, and probably, like Chad said, someone offshore, some international conglomerate somewhere.
Wait, I thought we believed in the free enterprise system. That doesn't sound like that's.
It's a different kind of free, like no cost free. Yeah. No, you're right. We all go out, take risk, invest money, and pay taxes. And we
okay, but hold on. I think that's an important thing to explore, because I don't think people get that, Chad. Say that again. You go out, you pay, and you've told us this. You have all kinds of expenses. You have all kinds of employees. You go out, you pay tons and tons of taxes. You have to employ all these people, buy all this equipment, get all of this, work out the land deals with owners, because you don't go in and eminent domain them, right? No. You work out a deal with them in which people actually are compensated for what you do on their property, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so there's no eminent domain involved. But what you're talking about, on the other hand, is when we're talking about with wind and solar, and certainly with these transmission lines, because that's a federal thing, and they've considered it to be, and I forget what it's called. Sandra could tell me. It's national interest. That's it. The national interest power corridor, so that they can eminent domain people's property for this. For things that are out of state, people and investors that are out of state using our tax dollars, and you, on the other hand, actually do practice free enterprise. You put your own money in, your own blood, sweat, and tears and risk, and end up having to pay to do that. I'm not sure how and this is a great comment. The wind lobby is providing re-election donations for politicians. It's money laundering. And then Julia says, free market now means steal from your neighbor. I think that's where the free comes from, right? We're just going to start stealing.
Their free market and my free market are different.
Well, their free market does not incorporate any risk other than possibly to the people who are putting up the stupid things.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, they're doing things that people would never in their right mind do with their own money,
because it's not their money.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk just a little bit about this too. So, and again, check me up. So the Corporation Commission is a state regulating authority made up of elected officials, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and they regulate mainly oil and gas, correct?
Well, they regulate a lot of things. I mean, they regulate transportation, some forms of transportation. They regulate oil and gas. They regulate gasoline. They do regulate electricity, utilities. They cover a lot of ground.
Solar or wind in there.
I think they regulate some of that, but not much. I mean, I don't know the answer. I shouldn't go where I don't know. So,
well, let's
I know
put it this way, Chad. I have been able to find out who regulates them. So that may have been just.
You have or have not? I
have not. I have not been able to find out who regulates them. So anybody, I may not have done really great research, but if anybody knows, please throw it in the comments, because I think everybody would like to know who's regulating these things. Because it also seems unfair that you would have a certain regulatory burden placed upon you for power that actually is more efficient, and yet there's no regulatory burden that I've been able to figure out for wind or solar.
Well, yeah, and I think what you see is that the Corporation Commission regulates the utilities, public utilities, but and when you look at the generation of wind in Oklahoma, maybe 5% of it to 10% of it is generated by the utilities, and probably 90% of it is generated by what are called independent power producers. And so these are the, NextEra and NL of the world that come in and build a project and then get the grid built out to them, and then they sell their power onto the SPP, onto the Southwest Power Pool. So, it's not, it's not the utilities building all those wind turbines you see. Now, there's some that are. PSO is, they own several of those projects. So, and then ones they own, they integrate into their rate base. I mean, a good example is PSO just got a $2.5 billion rate increase about a year ago to buy 3 renewable energy facilities. I think it was 3 wind farms and 2 solar farms, if I'm remembering correctly. And none of those facilities were in the state of Oklahoma. So when you talk about now, those facilities pay ad valorem tax, but they're not going to pay any ad valorem tax in Oklahoma. I think they're in Kansas and Texas. So you've got Oklahoma ratepayers getting a rate increase for power generation that's not even in the state.
Wow. So I'm curious how that works.
You and me both.
I think we know how it works. I don't know, but I'm fairly certain that may be it. There's a conversation that I did want to have with you because you are a geologist.
I'm actually a petroleum engineer by background.
Okay, petroleum engineer. I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's okay. Sure.
So an oil and gas should be considered a renewable source. We've been brainwashed about the multiple ways of how oil and gas is created within our planet. I do want to sit on that for a second and talk about that because now I graduated with my degree, my master's in 92. And way back there, they were still talking about, we've only got 50 years of oil left. We're not going to be able to power anything because, we've only got 50. And then the climate is going to, all of this stuff, even, back in 92. But then what I've learned on my own since then is that they found different ways that natural gas is produced. So it's not a pocket that's just from dinosaurs like we were told. It actually renews. And then I've even heard that about oil. Can you kind of help us out with that at all?
I don't know about that one. I mean, the renewable, some people might, I don't know if they talk about renewable gas as far as like they get gas from like dumps,
Oh yes, there is.
They have some of that, but I don't know if I would go down the road of it being renewable, but what you see is the definition of renewable just expands to whatever's needed. I mean, somebody said the other day, wood is now considered a renewable resource. I think if you ash the tree, it wasn't renewable. So,
well, I mean, and that's, so how do you feel then about, because we all know that really everything on the planet was built from oil and gas. I mean, there's just not a
I mean, everybody needs to understand their life would not be what it is today without oil and gas, period, in the story. I mean, if you want to see what your life would be like without oil and gas, go into, middle Africa or someplace like that where they don't have abundant energy. I mean, abundant energy equals a quality of life. I mean, it raises the standard of living for people. And it's unfortunate that those people live in the situation that they do. And if they were allowed to bring natural gas and generate electricity into those places, we can ship LNG anywhere in the world instead of giving them, some sort of device that they can't even use. You could bring electricity to them, or you could bring energy to them. I mean, that's the thing that's really unfortunate is, when you hear people use that terminology that we're the Saudi Arabia of natural gas and oil, it's true. The United States produces more oil than any country in the world. We produce more gas than anybody in the world, hands down. And if we had a reasonable price structure, we could produce even more. But the thing you got to realize is, I'll give you an example. in Oklahoma on gross production tax, every dollar of the price of natural gas is worth about $200 million of gross production tax. And so what we've seen since 2010, the gas price has gone down about 60%.
Yeah. And
that's directly correlative to the increased use of renewables in the electricity market. I mean, they've gone from being 5% or 0% of the electric market in Oklahoma to 45%. Coal got displaced. Yeah, coal got displaced down to where they're a minimal amount of them. They're less than 10% of the market. Natural gas could have easily stepped into that gap, but that didn't happen because of all these subsidies. And so what does that mean? I mean, when you look at, Oklahoma had the lowest natural gas prices in 30 years in May of this year. I mean, the natural gas price is not in a good place right now. And you look at the gross production tax receipts for fiscal year 2024 versus 2023, they were down $700 million, mainly because of gas prices going down. And if you were allowing natural gas to generate that electricity, that would create more demand, that would create a better price. And realize this, I'm not talking about a high price. I'm talking about a price would be, $3 or $4, which is what most people have lived under for years. So, I mean, so you've got a situation where the wind in Oklahoma is taking about $2 billion out of the state's pocket. And then they're having an adverse effect on the natural gas price, which is affecting the gross production tax, which goes to all the citizens in all 77 counties. So, I mean, there's no win. There is no win in that deal for the citizens of the state. I mean, oil and gas is sitting here. We're paying our share of taxes. We're creating jobs. We're here for the long run. We're not going to leave in 20 years whenever the turbines have depreciated out. I mean, we've been here for 100 years making oil and gas, and we'll be here for a long, long time, as long as we're allowed. And so, I mean, we're here for the duration. We're here to give back to the state and be a good citizen of the state. And we pay more than our fair share of taxes.
Yeah. And just to clarify, that gross production tax, that's a benefit to every single person, or I guess every county in the state, compared to wind doesn't pay anything. I mean, what is there, like, if you've got a county that's producing a high amount of wind energy, what's the benefit to maybe a county that has none? Is there any?
There's zero. I mean, there's 26 counties in Oklahoma that get ad valorem tax from the wind. So that means there's 51 that don't. So that $2 billion price tag we're talking about, for those 51 counties, their return in the investment was a big negative.
Wow.
Well,
and I want to say, Jenni, just real quick, since we were talking about that price impact on natural gas, what is always the biggest deal with the state government, Jenni? It's the cheerleader corps with jobs. We're creating more jobs. The government's creating more jobs. Well, how many jobs are being created if you have negative price impact on natural gas? And Chad, I want to ask you also, what's the break-even point for the price of natural gas to actually be viable? Because you're literally employing probably hundreds of thousands of people across the state in the natural gas business, as opposed to wind. So, what's the point to where this really starts being concerning with jobs in Oklahoma?
Well, I think you're there. I mean, we're gonna average a natural gas price in Oklahoma for 2024 that'll be sub $2. I mean, that is scraping the bottom of the barrel for natural gas. And Oklahoma produces oil and natural gas, but if you really look at it, we are a natural gas state. I mean, there's some great stuff going on right now developing oil resources in the state, but it's pretty hard to go out and drill a straight gas well when you're looking at sub $2 gas prices. And so, I mean, realistically, you need a price that's, $3.50 or better would be a healthy price. I mean, and I'm not asking for some ridiculous price. I'm just saying something that's healthy. And so I think for a lot of the producers out there, the prices are not sustainable for them. And so you're just having the demand for the product destroyed by somebody who's not paying their fair share. I mean, here's the thing. If you go to the information from the pricing, like daily pricing on Southwest Power Pool, you'll see at times that the power in the Southwest Power Pool actually is going for negative prices. And the guy who's producing all the power or most of the power in those situations is the wind. So, I mean, they're in essence, they're producing power at a negative price. And I don't know anybody that can run a business at negative. Well, the reason they can run at negative is they're getting a $30 a megawatt hour subsidy.
Wow.
So until the price gets to negative $30, they're not even to break even yet. So they're in essence, they're flooding the market with electricity so they can get their subsidy. And it's just creating a negative situation. I mean, I've said it before. I mean, I look at it like you're dumping. I'd be like dumping steel or dumping soybeans or something like that. I mean, you're dumping electricity into the market that nobody needs.
So I want to go back just a second. Robert actually made a comment. I've thrown it up, but we haven't had a chance to get to it. We literally vent natural gas in Oklahoma because it's so cheap. Buyers don't want it. Is that the case, really?
I don't know about that part. I mean, I think venting gas is something that doesn't happen very often anymore.
Okay.
I think, people go out and they drill wells, like you drill an oil well, the gas isn't worth much, but typically I don't know of a lot of people venting things. I mean, that wouldn't be smiled upon. So.
Well, I guess what he's saying then is you're not capturing the natural gas while you're going after the oil because it's not worth your time.
No, we capture it all. I mean, we'd capture it all.
Okay.
And, yeah.
What is like when I drive through the Panhandle, I see like a side off to the side and I see a flare, going. I mean, is that like are they actually just wasting that gas there, or like is that part of?
Now, sometimes when you're drilling an oil and gas well, you encounter gas pressure, and so how they'll deal with that sometimes is they flare it while they're drilling, but that's a short-term thing.
Okay.
One of your comments popped up there, I think, is worth talking about the idea of backup of wind and solar.
Okay.
And we should talk about that for a second, because so one of the things that goes on is that obviously the sun doesn't shine all day and the wind doesn't blow, and usually the wind doesn't blow when we need electricity most, right? When it's 100 degrees, the wind doesn't blow, and when it's 7 degrees, the wind doesn't blow, typically. And so it gets into this issue that you're building all this power out, but it's not reliable. And so they get into these things where they have to have reserve margins, and they have to have higher and higher reserve margins associated with the renewables, which is in essence a nice way of saying you're not reliable. So we need to have backup to you. And so the backup is power that's dispatchable. Dispatchable power is things like coal or natural gas. Those are thermal power that I turn on the switch, I light the fire, and I'll give you all the power you want to have. I'm not dependent on anything except I have to have fuel, basically. So in essence, you've got to build gas. I hate this when I talk about this. You have to build gas backup to the renewables so that they can function.
No, you do not.
Well, that's kind of stupid. It's like I told Representative Dobrinsky in the hearing the other day. I said, he used to own a car dealership. I said, how many times do you see somebody come in and buy 2 cars so they can drive one? Why don't you just build the power out that you need instead of building a certain kind of power that's not reliable? When they talk about AI and data centers, and that's kind of the in vogue thing, a term they use in there is 5 nines power. That's 99.99999% reliable. Those AI centers cannot have a dip of power longer than 1 second. Now, I'm pretty sure if I built my AI center tied to a wind farm, I would be in a bad way. And so in essence, they need natural gas to deliver that power. And the really scary thing is that, the Southwest Power Pool controls the interconnection queue, and they've got all these projects that they're approving to be built in all over the 14 states they control. And like for Oklahoma, there was one thermal project, so one natural gas project out of about 100 projects. All those others are battery storage and solar and wind. Now, whether those projects get built or not, we'll see. But I'm just saying that we're continuing to build this thing higher and higher on renewables without a firm foundation of reliable power, which is natural gas. I mean, natural gas is the obvious answer. When you look at CO2 emissions in the United States, how they've come down, that's because natural gas has displaced coal. Simple, end of story. And that was happening before renewables got to where they got. I mean, you want to have the answer, that's the answer. And that's a home run for Oklahoma. You know, all these renewable build outs are just more subsidies, more tax credits, more visual pollution. You know, like my wife said last night, I told her I was doing this. She said, you know, they've ruined the Arbuckles with all these wind turbines they built down there.
Okay, I'm actually going to argue with your wife. They've ruined every place they put them.
I agree. No, I agree with you. No.
I'm not going to hold the Arbuckles out here as some kind of little. No, it's everywhere.
You're braver than I am. I don't argue with my wife, but I agree.
Yeah, well,
well, Chad,
girls,
in the Southwest Power Pool, like, are we in like state contractual agreement with them? I mean, what is like? Do we have to provide to them or be beholden to what they say or do? What is that exactly?
Really interesting about that, and I'm not an expert on Southwest Power Pool, but I know a little bit about it. It's 14 states in a territory, and it goes all over the map, goes all over the place. But in essence, they cost share on projects. And so remember, I told you Oklahoma is a net exporter of electricity right now, so we really don't need more electricity, and we're probably the largest contributor to the SPP, I think around 25%. And so when they build a project in another state, we in essence contribute into that project on a cost sharing basis. And the scary thing about SPP is they just approved it here in the last day or two. They're going to build across what's called the seam. So they have these, SPP is a regional transmission organization, RTO. And there's RTOs all over the country. And so the one immediately to the east of us is called MISO. It's the Midwestern one. They just built across what they call the seam between those things or approved it to link those together. Why they want to link it together is so they can take renewables off the SPP and take them across the MISO and into PJM, which is the northeast part of the United States. Well, they want to do the same thing. They want to take SPP west to California. They want to take, they're building that loop out into North Dakota and Wyoming and all those places, and they're just lining up to take it out again to the west. So again, more power for people that aren't here, that isn't really helping the cause.
Well, so I want to point out something. Becky says, wow, those figures are wild. The problem we're having in the wind companies, Becky lives out in the Panhandle, aren't paying their property taxes. It's all tied up in litigation while the school districts are unable to access the funds that are in their calculations, but they're not accessible. Apparently, this is a common game wind companies play, while the local natural gas companies always sponsor all the local events and are very active in the community.
Becky's very smart, because what happened is when I remember I told you there were tax credits and there were some ad valorem reimbursements. My understanding is that during the 5 years of the ad valorem reimbursements, the wind companies would just be like, yeah, sure, great. Whatever the valuation is here, let's pay it. Once they became on the hook for the valuations, they started to protest the valuations. And I think, and I'm a little bit out of my bandwidth here, but I think the state had to create a separate court or an additional court to deal with all the ad valorem disputes that were going on.
Wow.
Because enlarging government to give subsidies to unsustainable energy sources is what our state does.
They have. Yeah.
Well, as a net exporter, okay, so
Wow.
we're a net exporter,
Wow.
and obviously, who is the ultimate beneficiary here? Because you've got natural gas, which is literally at $2. You know, you said you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, so the natural gas guys are not benefiting. Who is getting the ultimate benefit of us being this net exporter? Because I know my electric bill is not going down, the cost of my energy is not going down as just a regular guy. And you know, who is it? Some private,
It's
you
the
know,
renewable. It's the
investors?
renewable. It's the renewable generator. It's the independent power producer I talked about. It's that entity that comes into Oklahoma, develops a wind farm, and builds it, and then they take all their federal credits, and they take, you know, there's not any. If somebody built one today, I don't believe there's any more state zero emission tax credits available to them. So it's really chasing the federal credits. I mean, they're going to take all that money and they're going to use you, and they're going to take their profit and see you later. I mean, realize in Oklahoma, we're a net exporter of natural gas, right? I mean, unabashedly, no doubt we do. But when we produce the gas, the state gets a 7% gross production tax, or a 5%, turning into a 7. So they get a gross production tax on that production. Right now on electricity, you don't get anything.
So there's no revenue coming into the state from these renewables. And in fact, they're just getting subsidized to basically put negative priced energy into the system. Is that what's happening?
They're getting, at this point on a new project, my understanding of it, they'd be getting federally subsidized. They're going to pay some local ad valorem tax of some sort, of some form, and they're not going to pay any kind of a production tax to the state.
Wow. If they even pay their ad valorem, according to Becky, there's issues across the board with them even paying their ad valorem.
Right.
So I want to just take another little turn, if you don't mind, and just talk about some safety issues here, because remember, we talked about the Corporation Commission and how you're regulated. The oil and gas industry is highly regulated in Oklahoma. And I've told you, I've been unable to figure out how either wind or solar are regulated here. And I think it's extremely important to point that out, because drilling that's not an easy thing, number one, and it's not without risk. I mean,
That's
are
right.
all kinds of explosions can happen. We all know this. It's happened, from the beginning of time.
Well, and
But it's
financial risk too, Jenny, just basic.
Yeah, but I mean,
financial risk.
just to be fair, in the middle of your question, we're probably one of the most highly regulated industries there are. The levels of safety and things that go on are just incredible. I mean,
right. And that's what I was trying to get
compared
at.
to when I started 30 years ago to today, industry is much safer. I mean, safety comes first. We try our best. I mean, no doubt we're dealing with Mother Nature, and sometimes things happen. But we're as an industry, we are working really hard.
Well, here's what I was
safe.
going to say. So I know that you guys, because I have a friend who does it. I know you employ firemen, just so that if anything happens, you have firemen right there. You have, you've built into a system. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You've built into a system for emergencies to happen, because,
Right.
That's the way it's been. Am I wrong?
No, that's correct. I don't know that
Okay.
everybody has a fire brigade sitting out on their location, but larger scale operations do.
Yeah.
Or we're supportive of the local communities and their fire departments, and we try and work hand in hand with those kind of folks to make sure that it's a safe environment for everybody. Or if something happens, we have the ability to deal with it.
And this is where I'm going, is what Steph's saying. And it's not just environmental impacts, but we know, because we've talked to our friend in Enid, Nean Clinton. They've got a very large solar installation that they're trying to put in, multiple hundred, I think it's 1,100 acres that they're trying to build just north of Enid in Garfield County. And in her research, I mean, when lithium batteries catch fire, it can take weeks to put them out. And that's firefighting costs. That's water. Where are you going to get all of that water to keep dumping on that? I mean, you've got the firemen that somebody's going to have to pay for. And in Garfield County, there are some that are just volunteer. And in different areas. They're just volunteer. And yet nobody's going to pay for that. The solar company hasn't said, no, yes, we've got all of these things in place, these mechanisms in place, these plans in place if there's a fire or if something happens. So they're kind of out there going, well, not only are you going to put this in, but there's no safety protocol here. And it's been the same thing with the wind. I mean, the wind turbines have gone down in tornadoes. They've been hit by electrical storms. They spew oil all over the ground. I mean, there are all of these things that are happening, and it doesn't seem to be, like I said, the regulation issue here, I think, is kind of paramount, because we're not only are we not getting any bang for our buck out of this, because the things are produced out of state. So many people that are employed aren't even employed in this state. There's nothing about the green, the solar and the wind right now that can even, in my view, hold a candle. You said something, and Becky said something a minute ago. You work in the area. I mean, your explorers are like helping kids baseball teams. You guys live here, but
Right.
these other people are coming in from out of state, out of town. They don't need to help a baseball team or whatever. I mean, I think it's really important.
I mean, if you want to put a fine point on that, look around Oklahoma and look in the history of a lot of the things that are here, from, the Noble family and all the things they've done. Harold Hamm's done great things down at OU at the Diabetes Center. I mean, Charles Schusterman has donated money for a cancer center. I mean, Charlie Stevenson gave money for the cancer center at OU. Those are all oil and gas guys. I mean, the people who are most charitable in the community, Aubrey McClendon was very generous. I mean, I know I'm forgetting people on that list, and that's not on purpose. There's just so many of them. I mean, there's a lot of money that's put back into the community for charitable efforts by oil and gas folks, because we live here. We're part of the state. We're citizens of the community. We want to be good stewards and good citizens. I mean, it's as simple as that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the scary thing about some of the solar farms are, whereas we're heavily regulated, I don't know how heavily they are regulated, but you read a lot of stories about these solar farms over time that they crack and degrade, and the rain going through the solar panels is basically leaching out heavy metal into the ground in those situations. And so I don't know who's regulating all that. I mean, I can't speak to who regulates them.
Well, I'm just telling you, I haven't found anyone yet.
Yeah.
No, I don't doubt you. I'm just saying I'm not an expert on who regulates solar. I'm busy dealing with all the regulations we have to deal with. So,
Steph says the heart of Oklahoma is oil and gas. And honestly,
one thing you were talking about, these turbines and them falling apart or leaking or whatever, there's a situation going on right now where, you've seen this thing off Martha's Vineyard where the wind turbines are falling apart, like the blades broke and they got on the beach and the blades disintegrated.
Oh, I did see that.
Yeah. So GE, I think the company's called Vervona, or it's one of their subsidiaries, provided those blades. Well, they also provided the blades for a project out in Western Oklahoma that PSO owns, and now they're having the same problem. So they've got wind turbine blades that have problems. They've got a federal lawsuit going on against them. And so there's a, several $100 million project that's just sitting in their rate base that may not even be able to operate properly.
Well, and to be fair, there have been some things over the years with oil and gas cleanup.
Sure.
But
we clean it up.
Yeah, but I was going to say, and I don't remember what the organ is. Is it now? Because two of them combined, right, to create the Oklahoma Petroleum Association.
The Petroleum Alliance was created out of the Oklahoma Oil and Gas Association and the Oklahoma Independent Petroleum Association, OIPA.
And I thought it was the OIPA that was the one that started making sure that these sites were reclamated, or am I wrong?
Well, the parties at the OIPA helped to create the OERB.
That's it. Okay.
Oklahoma Energy Resource Board, and it was created. It's a voluntary organization that's a checkoff program that the producers basically give some fraction of, again, it's like another tax on us, but it's not a tax. It's a voluntary contribution that goes in to fund that. And that works for project reclamation and things like that, and education.
And education. So they go out and do, education for students they have a
Petro Pros, the Petro Pros program they do with the teachers and in the schools and all that stuff. It's a great program.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're getting to the end of an hour, and I think you had some other things going on, but Chad, give us kind of an upshot here if you want to close, or if there's anything that we didn't kind of talk about. And I know you had slides, but I think
we've actually covered everything that was in the slides. We did great. We just talked about it and didn't show pictures. So
okay.
Well, I have a quick question before you close out on that subsidy side with all the wind farms. How long do they get these subsidies? Is there like a time limit, or they're just in perpetuity, or like what's the issue there?
Well, Michael, I can't remember the exact wording in the Inflation Reduction Act, but it is tied to when there's certain emission goals achieved at the federal, at a certain level, and those goals are so, in my opinion, unachievable.
Yeah.
That in essence it makes them last forever without them writing in the bill that they're going to last forever. And my hope is that, new administration, that those things are going to go away and level the playing field. I mean, if I were summing up how we feel about it as an industry, we just want a level playing field.
Yeah.
I mean, we're paying in more than our share of taxes. We pay more taxes than anybody. And it's just not fair for somebody to ride for free and take half the market, and not really they're doing it to the detriment of the citizens of the state, in my opinion.
Well, and again, and I'm going to point this out because I've done the research and I can tell you it's a fact. And then not only are these people subsidized by the federal government, but now you have private businesses. Now you have investment houses that are pumping private money into this stuff too. So it's just absolute. It's ludicrous to me. It's just the whole thing. It doesn't.
You're getting ready to see how altruistic everybody's motives are whenever these subsidies get repealed.
Yeah,
because suddenly, I mean, they're about green, and it's the green of the money, not the green of the environment.
Oh yeah. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Hands up.
That's a clip right there. That's a clip right there, Jenny.
That sure absolutely is. It's about the green, but it's money and not the environment. I completely concur. Do you think, Chad, if the new administration comes in and we can get rid of some, Capitalist Sooner says, here comes Dodge too. We're sure hoping so. Wouldn't that be nice? So if the new administration comes in and I don't think they're going to phase out the green thing. I think it's become I think it's about money, and I think there's so much money in it now. We're going to have problems getting it out, and that's on us. We should have been paying more attention. But if they do what's right anyway, and they start really flaring this stuff back, do you think natural gas, I mean, we can use that to power vehicles. We do that in the state. Isn't it pretty doggone clean? It's not like coal that vents a lot of sulfur and you have to have a lot of traps to burn, coal.
Natural gas is the cleanest, most abundant, affordable, reliable option there is. I mean, and we're not taking a federal subsidy to make it. Yeah. And the other thing is, like with this LNG pause that was out here, that's going to get turned away. But, the U.S. has a really interesting position in the world when we have that much natural gas and we can deliver it to our friends across the globe. Yeah. I mean, it's a powerful thing for creating allies for the United States and helping people stay secure. And so it's a win all around, and the industry has become incredibly efficient. And, the types of wells that are being created now, I mean, we have the ability to produce a lot of product, but we have to be able to produce it in a business environment where we can survive.
Well, yeah, because it takes all the technology to figure that stuff out.
Yeah,
I mean that's not cheap.
You realize when you see a well drilling in a lot of these places, I mean, you're talking about $10 and $15 million investments. I mean, in a lot of the small newspapers, if somebody said, I'm going to come spend $50 million in town, you would be on the front page of the paper.
Yeah.
And these companies they're drilling $50 million developments off one pad on a regular basis. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of capital being invested in the state to create a lot of value and jobs and pay taxes and create a good situation for everybody. And, like you said, when it's 7 below zero, that wind turbine's not going to turn, and there's not going to be any sun on the solar panel, and good luck on a battery in the cold.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to be looking for natural gas to get you power. So.
Well, Chad, I sure do appreciate you, and I don't want to speak for Michael, but I'm pretty sure Michael does as well.
Yes,
We so appreciate you coming on
and
talking to us today, because I do think that people are just not aware. I think there's a lot of, well, yeah, we want to do what's right for the environment, and I think normal people do, right? I mean, we all do, but we also want to do what's right for Oklahoma. And I think you did a really great job of articulating what's better for Oklahoma here.
Yeah, because if New York wants a renewable standard or zero emissions, good on them. Good luck. And, Niagara Falls is all you got because their wind is not very good and they don't have much solar. So, don't ask for things you can't provide and expect me to provide it. I mean, that's the reality. It'll be interesting to see what happens now with this administration change, how green everybody's really going to be and how zero emission strong they're really going to be and how ESG crazy they're all going to really be. I mean, as an industry, we want to do things clean. We don't want to have an adverse impact on the environment, and we want to be a good steward of the community. But I mean, some of the things that have been done over the last 4 years are just so over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
they're not realistic. At least they're not realistic for Oklahoma. So
there's no debate about that. And I think the only reason why people even think otherwise is because they're not well informed.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just facts. If you can provide people with facts and data, they suddenly, figure out they didn't realize they didn't know. So.
Well, and here's what I'll do. I'll take that PowerPoint, because I think, people like to hear people talk. They prefer to do that rather than, see slides. But I do think the slides are important, because I do think when you see data in real time and you can put your eyeballs on it and see a graph or see the lines, I think it's really important. And I'll just upload those onto our website with the clips from this show.
That'd be great. And those came from that interim study. They're already out in the public domain. But okay. I'll share one thing with you that is interesting from those slides and talking about how much tax we pay.
Yeah. You want me to find the slide?
Oh, sure. If you want to. Yeah. It's like the third slide.
Okay. Well, good. Let's do that then.
Is it
that one or the one back?
No, go back one.
Okay.
So this is interesting. So from 2022 and 2023, we paid $1.7 billion per year of GPT. And that was 2 times the motor vehicle tax, 3 times motor fuel, 4 times cigarettes, 10 times beverages, which alcoholic beverages, 30 times the franchise tax, 30 times medical marijuana, and 54 times horse racing. We pay more tax in a year than some of those things have paid since inception. So, I mean, I think that kind of helps put it in perspective of how much tax we're paying. And we average paying about $1 billion a year over a 20-year period, because there's ups and downs in price, no doubt.
So where's your slide about how many tax credits the wind industry is getting?
Go to the next slide. Click to the next one.
Okay.
This is gross production tax from 2003 to 2023, the green bars, and this is going from left to right. I kind of flipped on you there. But the red lines going down are the zero emission tax credit and the ad valorem payments. So they're not above the line, they're below the line.
Wow.
Oh my word.
Well, total rig game.
Go down while we're just started talking. Go down to slide 7 and I'll show you something too. So this is from 2001 to present, percentage of electric generation. And so the black line is coal going down to the right, okay, which coal's getting phased out. And the orange line in the middle is natural gas.
Oh, wow.
And you can see from 2010, or really from about 2006, it's relatively flat. I mean, we're 42% in 2005 and we're 50% right now.
Yeah.
Versus you look at wind, they come up off the deck. And starting in about 2010, they're at 5%, and now they're at 42%. You know, it's not really surprising. I mean, since we're in this, I know we're wrapping up, but since we're here, go to slide 10 for a second. This puts it out here. This is gas price from 2001 to present, and this is wind generation. I'm not sure. You don't have to go to a lot of places to school to figure that one out.
Yeah.
Wind goes up, gas price goes down.
Yeah. Wow. And again, we're paying for that. I mean, that's the crazy thing. It's not even in the free market at all. It's not in the free market space at all.
You're paying for it, and then you're not getting paid.
Yeah.
You're paying out in credits, and you're not getting paid in gross production tax.
Julia says it's a Ponzi scheme.
Well,
I think that's pretty bad.
And we're not seeing any benefit of our prices coming down. I mean, we're paying more for electricity anyway.
And they're gonna get higher. I mean, again, I'm sorry, we're here, but go to slide 18. I know you're wrapping up, but
okay.
That's the rate increases nationally. And you can see there's a pretty strong correlation. 2021, the Inflation Reduction Act comes into place, and they're projecting about $9 billion for 2024, and it's all driven by electrification. So anyway.
Oh, wow. Okay, so way off the topic here, but I'm just curious because we're talking about energy, and that's fascinating. Wow. I'm glad we got a chance to look at those. So what do you think about hydrogen as a source of energy?
It probably has a long way to go. I mean, I think there's some complexities involved with hydrogen. Hydrogen's the smallest molecule there is, so there's some questions. There's some issues about pipelining hydrogen, and then I think right now they're only able to truck it. So interesting. I don't know a lot about it. I think there's some applications of hydrogen. I've heard of where you like if you had a trucking business that went from your trucks went from New Orleans to Dallas over and over again, or New Orleans to Dallas and New Orleans to I don't even know, Memphis, and you are going in a trip that was filling up the hydrogen tank on the truck would take you the whole trip, and you had a facility on the other end. I think some of those applications might make sense, but on a broader scale, I think there's still developments that have to happen. And I'm not an expert on it. I just know a little bit.
No, I was just curious. Yeah. I mean, I was just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Well, Chad, again, thank you very much for being with us. So appreciate your time and your knowledge.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
And really appreciate the discussion on that. And we had a lot of people who were interested in it watching. So I think that's really great. So for those of you who are watching, please share this information with your family and friends so they kind of know what's going on. And so thank you very much. We really appreciate you.
Well, you're welcome. And I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Chad. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Well, that was fascinating. I was so glad we had him on.
Well, I just want to bring this up again.
So much sense.
Yeah, I want to bring this up again.
Yeah.
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 I tell you what a rigged game, Jenni. What a rigged game.
That's a totally rigged game. And it's not like, oil and gas don't have their lobbyists too. It's not like that. I mean, yes, they do. But I mean, I think at this point, they're probably just trying to keep the government from extorting any more money from them.
Yeah.
I think so.
Well,
That being said,
it's that global initiative, that Green New Deal initiative, and just the amount of money that was created during the Inflation Reduction Act itself it's literally criminal. I mean, they literally just put things in place. Like there was no other way to do it unless you have, some type of, COVID situation, and you got to have all this, these emergency crises. Now you got to just come up with all this fake money out of thin air, and you put it into these, green initiatives in one way or another. Like I've said, we're 100% against pollution. No one wants 100%. To pollute anything, but nothing. I mean, there's no energy creation that's cleaner than natural gas. I mean, literally, the technology they have in the scrubbing system, or whatever they do. I mean, literally. What's the result of natural gas? I don't even
think you have to scrub natural gas. There is some stuff in the production of gas from petroleum, and there's lots of scrubbing with coal, which is why they've kind of phased it out, because it's just too dirty. I mean, it's so hard to create and pay for the upkeep of all of the ways to mitigate the bad stuff, like the sulfur and some of the other stuff that's coming out of coal. It's just so expensive to do, the way I understand it, that they've just kind of had to phase that out. But that's not the same with petroleum. That's not the same with natural gas. And I do hope people will understand that it's not an even playing field.
No,
it's not. And
none of those windmills would exist without that massive subsidy. I mean, to literally,
no way.
To literally be subsidized more money than you actually produce. I mean, how would any regular business owner like to just be subsidized more than they actually sell? Like, how would you like to have just your local store or whatever? Okay, well, we're going to give you a subsidy just because you're doing whatever, you're agreeing with whatever. I mean,
but we do that all the time. And one of the things I didn't want to get into with Chad, because I didn't want to detract from his message, but one of the slides that we put up there that talked about, was the first slide. Wasn't it the first slide in his presentation where he talks about the amount of taxes? Yeah. No, 4. The amount of taxes. Oh, no, there it was. It was number 2, 3. And all I could, even though, I know we were there to talk about Chad, all I could look at was think to myself, they have this guy says it's called graft. And you can really see that. I mean, you're laughing because it's true. You can really see that in this particular slide, because look at how much money the government has extorted out of us, and think about how many things: medical marijuana, horse racing, cigarettes, and motor fuel. I know for a fact this was all for education, right? Big chunks of it were supposed to go to education. And now we don't have kids who can even read when they're graduating high school. So if you're still one of the people who's watching this live, please remember to tell everybody that that government is graft. And this is a perfect slide that shows exactly what that means. And we're never going to be free until we can get the government off our back and quit allowing them to tell us what they'll do for us instead of us doing for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and this is the absolute perfect example of the government picking. The government picking winners and losers. The government is literally picking the winner here, and it's not us. It's not the people. It's not even your local companies, your local economy, even the state in any capacity. This is the government picking a winner with some type of large investment conglomerate on the other side. They're the ones making all the money, just like that NextEra. That's who we were talking about. And he kind of mentioned NextEra, and it reminded me. NextEra had 635% return for their investors. Not us, unless you were an investor. So there.
But here's stop though. That's the thing that just pisses me off so bad. You have a 635% investment for your whatever you said.
Your
return on investment, sorry, ROI for your investors, but the investors are getting money from taxpayers.
Yeah.
In what area of anything that makes sense do you have investors reaping benefits from taxpayers?
Well, that's the ultimate goal. That's the goal there. That's the serfdom. That's that kind of Marxist, fascist. That's real fascism at work right there, Jenni. That's literally the real fascism at work. That's that private company in partnership with the government, and they are the ultimate beneficiary, and we're the ultimate loser.
Couldn't have said it better. Before we're done here, I want you to talk about Howard Lutkin.
Oh God. I'll go.
Before you start on that, let's say that Trump just told us who his pick for Secretary of Education was the other day.
Yeah.
It's WWE, the wife of the man who created WWE, Beverly McMahon, I think is her name, McMahon. And, I was thinking, well, hey, that's great. Maybe she'll put Cardona in a headlock, as she's kicking him out the door. But then the problem that I really started thinking about a second ago or this morning was, and it was brought to my attention by the homeschoolers, that she's for universal school choice. So what'll end up happening with that is that, let's say we do get rid of the Department of Education, and in the end, that's a win. But what we'll end up doing is subjugating children and families all across the United States by telling them that, hey, the government will pay you to put your kids in private school or to homeschool, and then we'll all be arms of the government. So you talk about fascists, that would be it right there.
Yeah. Well, we saw here that Trump picked. Now, Lutkin's a guy that I kind of touched on before. Lutkin, he basically is the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, or he's the chairman CEO of it. He's been in that company for a long, long time. This dude is ultimate deep state, bad news, bad banker, corrupt business. I mean, I could go on and on. How Trump got hooked up with him, I don't know. He was co-chair of his transition team. He helped get a lot of people in place. He was floating his name for secretary of the Treasury, which I think this is an actual worse position for us. So he put him in as the commerce secretary. I think it's worse on multiple avenues because I think he wanted the Treasury, but ultimately this is going to be massively to his benefit. So I want you to look down here at the bottom of this, and I can't, this is a picture, so I can't highlight it, but it says, okay. He's co-chair of the Trump Vance transition team. He has created the most sophisticated process and system to assist us in creating the greatest administration we've ever seen. Okay. So they're not telling you what his process is. They're not telling you what his sophistication is. This guy goes way, way back in multiple avenues. But what I want to hit on is what's happening over the last 7-8 years with cryptocurrency, surveillance, digital ID, the whole 9 yards, global. We talk about one world government, one world religion, one world currency. This guy will be at the heartbeat of all of it. And he's in a position to where now he affects all these trade deals. Okay. That the commerce, that's kind of what they do. They promote the United States. They do all these trade deals. He's going to be working on the tariffs and all that. So he's going to have an avenue to literally just be the middleman between all these third world countries and the United States dollar, or the new system, that he's developed in one way or another. So he's tied in, Lutkin himself, he's tied in with a So when it comes to cryptocurrency, and I kind of hit on this just a little bit, Jenni, back when I did the crypto podcast. But there's two types. There's a type that's completely decentralized, which there's no human that issues it. There's no human that controls it. There's no business. There's no government that can do anything to it. It's completely independent of all that. That's like your Bitcoin. Bitcoin is completely decentralized. It's run on tens of thousands of computers, probably hundreds of thousands of computers all over the world. A government can't issue it, can't control it, can't do anything, can't steal it. They can't do anything to it. Now you take a guy like Lutnick here, who he and Cantor Fitzgerald, his company, they literally, he's been in bed with a stable coin called Tether. So Tether is just a pegged $1-to-1 cryptocurrency. So basically, if I deposit $1, they give me $1, a token, basically a digital token called, $1. So this guy is in, and I'll just bring up Tether here. So Tether itself has a trading volume. Okay. So think about this, Jenni. It has a trade, because you probably never really heard of this. You're like, how is this even happening? Who's even using this? If you look right up here in this top, and I probably need to make that just a little bit bigger, but where my mouse is, that's $148 billion traded in 24 hours. Okay?
Oh my Lord.
This thing is huge. It's absolutely huge. They're using it. It's not mainstream here in the United States, even though it is based on the US dollar. It's used all over the world. It's used in all these third world countries. Like, for example, in Argentina, they use Tether more than they use their own currency because their own currency is so unstable.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where a guy like this is going to come in. Now, Lutnick himself at Cantor, they literally custody like $80-90 billion of this so-called, they say they do, $80 or $90 billion of Tether is custodied at Cantor. So, and he's been a partner in Tether from the beginning with Brock Pierce, who basically created it. Brock is the ultimate bad guy. You want to talk about like Epstein, all the sex stuff. This dude is involved in all of it. He's the inventor of this, or one of the creators. Here's the problem. So we talk about one world currency and all this stuff. You have, and everybody uses the CBDC, the central bank digital currency. That's where they're focusing. That's where they're looking. That's where they're putting all the attention, as that's the ultimate bad boy in the room. Well, that's not the problem. The problem is a company like Tether, who's already in bed with the government. Okay. Tether is in bed with the CIA, the FBI, and the CIA is pretty open about their relationship with Tether. Wow. They literally, Tether themselves can go right in. Let's say if I had a wallet, on my phone, I'm paying for groceries or whatever, buying something, with Tether, which I can do now. I mean, I can even do it now if I want to. Tether can come right in. They can seize my wallet. They can shut it down. They can take my stuff. They can completely turn me off if they want to. Okay. You can't do that with other coins in cryptocurrency. So while we're all looking at the Fed and the CBDC, you have these guys now with Lutnick at the helm, basically going into all of these third world countries. They're going to install basically Tether as a payment, the global payment system can be, one of these stable coins like this. Another issue with Lutnick is he is one of the board members, or he's a super high up position in this company called Stratologic. Okay. Stratologic literally can, and this goes back to that statement in the beginning with Cantor or with Trump about their sophisticated processes. This guy Lutnick has been at the forefront of ESG from the beginning. They have huge funds dedicated to ESG. Now, they changed the name to like carbon finance or, climate finance and all the buzzwords, we talk about with Julianne. So they're not slowing this down in any capacity. This guy's going to be able to go in and do whatever he wants. So he's on the board of Stratologic. Stratologic here. Okay. So they've got $30 million of investments in Tether alone. Stratologic does. Well, when you look at Stratologic, and I think I had another
Satellogic.
Satellogic. So like satellites, what they do is all in this is a company that's, I think they're in Argentina maybe, but they're a Latin American company.
Okay.
They have satellites that literally monitor all of the carbon footprint in South America. Literally, that's what they do. So they can see where it is, where it's going, this, that, whatever, figure out how to tax it, figure out who's using, who's not using.
Wow.
Satellite surveillance. So when it comes to that, it's this guy's on the board. It's partnered with Tether. They're going down a huge rabbit hole of control, because when you're talking about this, you're talking about like the biometric wallet and control. I mean, this is just ultimate bad news, because ultimately here's what they're going to do. And I can bring up one of these funds that let me look here quick. Let me see where I have it. Okay. So there's Cantor's ESG conference that they had. This is pretty interesting.
And then back it up. Look at all the solar panels.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Look at that. Look at that.
Oh my God, that's horrifying.
Yeah. So this was Cantor's ESG conference. So I just want you to look at some of so they had 30 different technology companies presenting at this. So imagine how many people were there. But you're talking, AI software, cybersecurity, tech hardware, sustainability, EV and EV charging, lithium batteries, transportation. That's all lumped in.
Yeah.
That's all lumped into all this ESG stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That is all basically run in one way or another by Lutnick. And then they've got this sustainable infrastructure fund. Okay. So this is their ESG fund, and I actually had the ticker up on that, and you could just see how it's just completely skyrocketed. Over the past year.
Lutnick's been. So Heather asked a question though, and this is a fair question, Michael. So what do we do? I mean, none of us can see how anything would have been better under Harris.
Oh, yeah.
So what do we do?
Well, I mean, this is...
I mean, because Trump has made some boneheaded decisions, like bringing in, what's her name from North Dakota?
Noam. Kristi Noam.
Yeah, Noam. I mean, nobody likes the woman. I mean, she's not even likable, and she doesn't, I mean, it's like, why would you bring that in? She's allowed all this carbon capture crap to happen.
Yeah.
So I mean, why is she in there? So what are we gonna do? I mean, Heather's question is a good question.
Yeah. So obviously it'd be worse under Harris. There's no doubt about that. Or at least maybe we think it would be. I mean, that's the whole thing. We can't be on this MAGA high that all this stuff's just going to be great. Because let me show you something else. So and I'll just say, I think the only thing we can do is just try to expose these people, because if you know about it, then you can say, hey, I don't like this guy. I'll talk to my rep. I'll email my senator. This dude is bad news. Look at all that. I mean, what else can we do? I mean, this is high finance. This is that global cabal banking system that is going to keep their hands in everything, because they can't afford to lose control and power. But I want to show you this.
Wait, hold on one second. And to that point, he still has to be confirmed by the Senate, Heather. And we could literally tweet him and tweet out, or, comment out about this kind of stuff. Talk to our senators about that, our senators in DC, because they have to confirm him. And if there are red flags going up among the constituency, then they may have a chance to, realign that. I don't know, but I think that's about all we can do.
Yeah. Well, I want to show you this here real quick. So this is part of that Satellogic deal. And this is an article written by Mark Goodwin and Whitney Webb, which I love Whitney. She's awesome. She does deep dives into this kind of stuff. But this is, debt from debt, not just death, debt from above with this carbon credit coup. So you go down here, and she's talking about Green Plus, and Green Plus is basically that whole South American, push to carbonize or decarbonize everything and control. And I want to say one more thing about that here after I show you this. So, but here's the Green Plus program. So I want to show you down here what I've highlighted, with the founding members of Satellogic. Okay, so it was in Argentina. And you've heard me talk about Peter Thiel several times. Peter Thiel is the worst of the worst. This dude is not a capitalist. He's not a conservative.
PayPal.
He's not on our side.
They need to know.
Yeah.
Peter Thiel created PayPal.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he created PayPal. He's been on this digital forefront with guys like Lutnick for a long time.
Because we have to remind people, PayPal is currency less payment, right? So there's no
hard backing to anything.
Correct.
But what I want to tell you towards the end of this is how they're actually going to implement this strategy. So Stratologic here is they're closely aligned with Peter Thiel and his Palantir. So his Palantir company is just massive. They're just a massive, just huge lurch on the world almost, but also with SpaceX and Elon. So they're all in bed together. All these guys are in bed together. No matter how much we try to say, oh, they're going to do great, they're going to cut all this, they're all behind the scenes. They're all in bed together, and it's just something else. But here's what's going to happen is, so they need to, and I shared this in the crypto video. So what they want to do ultimately, Jenny, is they want to tokenize all of the assets of the world. So like your house is already somewhat tokenized, but it's just not digital. So you have a title, to your house. You have an abstract. You have a title to your car, and all these things. So your property, you have like a physical piece of paper in one way or another that says you own it. It's under your possession. You have like a Carfax that shows all the different things that have happened to your car. Right. So they want to do that on a grand scale. So part of like the whole Stratologic deal and this Green Plus deal is they want to tokenize the remaining assets of the world. So for example, like Stratologic literally talks about tokenizing the Amazon rainforest.
Oh, geez.
They want to say, here's the asset of the Amazon rainforest. Now we can tokenize it. We can trade it. We can control what's going on behind the scenes. So that's how this whole thing's going to roll out and I'll tell you how and why they got to do that, because our debt is so bad. We have so much debt. I mean, we have trillions and trillions and trillions, if not like quadrillions in debt. They have to be able to put that somewhere. Okay. Yeah. So if they can create, this is how all the banking, Wall Street, all this stuff works. If they can create a new asset class, now they can move all of that into this new class. So when you're looking at like tokenizing the rainforest and all these, just everything, when you're literally talking about 5xing all of the assets of the world right now. When you tokenize it, now you've created a new asset class that's 5 times bigger than all the assets of the world, which is literally it's just digital. There's nothing real behind it, because they don't want to back the dollar with something like gold or whatever. They want the dual banking system to where you have the Federal Reserve, private bank printing fake money and giving it to Wall Street to buy assets. This is an asset, this is an asset transfer. We hear, transferring wealth from, the greatest wealth transfer, like COVID was a wealth transfer where literally, like if you go really into the whole bailout program or the whole cash injection program of COVID, that whole thing was developed by BlackRock a year before, and it was called like going direct. So the year before COVID even happened, BlackRock had already put into place a process for the Federal Reserve, which is who we pay interest to. They print our money, we pay interest. They already put in an entire system to just take money straight from the Federal Reserve and put it straight into Wall Street. That's what they did. That's what they did during COVID. That's how Wall Street got so much money. It didn't go through Congress. We didn't get to vote on that. They did it on purpose because it was already set up. Well, this is the exact same thing. They're going to take a guy like Lutnick. He's going to basically put all these third world countries under his thumb, but with the trade deals and everything else, because it's all going to go through him. He's going to say, hey, I want you to put Tether in as an actual payment system in your country. I want you to take that, as an official currency, as official, money payment system. Yeah. So, and they're going to do it. And this guy, he's just bad news. I'm telling you, he's bad news for us, for the little people. This is like jumping for joy for Wall Street, for these, huge
geez.
multinational countries and I mean companies and people like that. But this guy's bad news. I hope Trump gets wind of it. But Trump is now, he's got his own digital. He's coming out with the stable coin himself. He's coming out with he's going to buy his Trump media company is going to buy a crypto exchange called BACT, BAKKT. So Trump himself knows and understands one thing, which is money. And he knows how much money is coming in that entire side, but he doesn't understand the surveillance side, the control side, the shutdown side, the oppression of freedom side. I mean, he just thinks, hey, I got a coin, all these people. He's thinking of it just like it's a stock. Okay.
Right.
A stock can't control you. If you own Coca-Cola stock, they can't come into your wallet and shut you down. Okay. Yeah. Tether and all these other deals, this digital rollout that they're going to bring in over the next 4 or 5 years and this tokenization of everything, that is 100% control. And we've done those podcasts with Julianne, but this is to the next level. I'm telling you, this is what's coming. They're going to tokenize everything, put it on these blockchains or a blockchain like this this blockchain is not like Bitcoin. This blockchain is controlled by a couple people. It's 100% programmable. It's controllable. They can increase the supply. They can decrease the supply. Plus, Tether, Jenni, has never been audited. So they say they have all this money. So they say they've got all these millions, 80, 90, 100 billion dollars worth of US dollars sitting somewhere in a bank account. It'd be pretty easy to show that. But I'm telling you, it's not there. It's not there. But me,
global debt is a Ponzi scheme. Getting money back to free market capitalism is the goal. Legal tender laws have created the Ponzi scheme. Gold is money, commodities are money. That sounds like, is that you, Michael, just commenting from a different name?
Yeah, there we go. Well, I mean, it's basic common sense, but here we go. If you have gold-backed money, now you lose the ability to massively inflate it. Okay. But you got to remember, people, banks really, their only product is inflation. That's how they make money, by issuing more of it. Okay. That's like the central bank. They don't have the Federal Reserve. They don't have any product other than inflation. They want to increase the money supply as much as possible. You know why? Because when we all crash and burn, who owns all the assets? They do. They're printing fake money to buy assets. That's what's happening. And this guy is going to massively increase it, because also, I forgot to tell you, Jenni, Lutnick and Cantor, they literally, at one time, they settled 70% of all the treasuries that were settled through Cantor. So if you bought a T-bill, if you bought a 2-year or 10-year T-bill or something, it settled through Cantor. So that's just another, it's just another boogeyman in the back. They want to sell treasuries with, fake dollars to all the people in the world, because if the inflation goes so high, guess what? You can't afford to live anymore. You're going to have to sell your assets. And guess who's there to buy it all? Right. They're going to buy it all.
But that's the 2-level system that they're trying to work out for us, the haves and haves nots, which is communism, right? We've got the bourgeoisie and the scabs.
I never believed, that we would be able to have a single world currency, or, I just, even as much as I went down those rabbit holes in the past, I just could never get to the point to where I could see, one world government, a single currency, single delivery system. But I'm telling you, I can see it now. It's so easy.
Where is your Alex Jones is right t-shirt?
Yeah. It's so easy to just see. I mean, because if you force these countries to literally do business under this US dollar hegemony type of token here, because it's not going away. As long as the Federal Reserve is in play and they can just literally give money to Wall Street, it's not going away. And that's what's happening, is you've got behind the scenes, outside of the scope of government, outside of Congress, outside of, we the people, these people are issuing huge amounts of money, and they're just making the value of our dollar literally just go like this.
Well, again, but it goes back to what Heather said or do about it. I mean, now full stop. God told us to start this podcast because my people perish for lack of knowledge. So I definitely believe that education is the beginning. I mean, that's the bottom. That's where we need to be, is educating people. And we're doing what we've been asked to do, which is educate people.
Yeah.
But then after people understand, I think the best thing to do is although probably 6 of them out of 180 something representatives and senators in our state capitol would tell you this. There is a 10th Amendment, and Oklahoma is a sovereign state, whether they like to believe it or not, because of federal dollars. So I think the thing that we have to do is, when we learn something, when we have experts like Chad or Julianne come on and talk about these things, or Mary from Visit come on and talk about these things, we've got to be sharing these with the people we elect to try to help mitigate this and increase our liberty, right? I don't see that there's any other way to do it. So Heather, if you really want to know what to do, I say take the little clips that we make out, or just take the URL from one of the podcasts and send it to your senator and or representative with a note saying, we've got to stop this. Do you know what's going on? Are you familiar with this? I don't think there's we don't have much. But Margie has it. Bible is right t-shirt. Because it's true. Everything's didn't Solomon say there is nothing new under the sun? Maybe that t-shirt.
Yeah.
There's nothing new under the sun, Solomon.
We may have an economic crash, and a lot of these people are saying, oh, the dollar is going to go away. I'm telling you, the dollar is going to be stronger than it ever has. And here's something that you got to think about. Like, inflation's continuing to go up. The strength of the dollar is continuing to go up, and the 10-year treasury is continuing to go up. Those are opposite. As the dollar goes up, the other one should go down.
Okay.
So when you look at that, you can just see that it's just completely unfundamental. I mean, there's no fundamentals in it.
Yeah.
And another thing about Luckin, I just thought of, he's a massive, massive, massive proponent of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Massive proponent.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's all over the UN Sustainable Development deal. All over it. And I think they have a fund at Cantor that is specifically.
Oh, I know they do. Not someplace in the carbon capture stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they do. You're 100% right on that.
So
not even a think.
So what do we do? I mean, at least if we know, maybe, but I would just.
Well, I mean, knowledge in itself is power. Ignorance is. You can always be fooled. The ignorant can always be fooled. So, there's definitely no argument that just learning this in and of itself is the first start. But again, I don't think there's any way to stop it if we don't communicate what we're learning here with our friends, our family, our representatives, our senators. I mean, we haven't had any likes or anything in a while on our YouTube and Rumble channels, and Rumble keeps screwing us over. I'm going to actually call them today. What they're doing to us now, well, and I see what you're saying. But wait. But I'm going to argue a little bit, Jules. The beginning, I mean, you have to have some kind of knowledge about something to even apply that power. So, I mean, I don't know. But
Jenni, I'm going to say something since you're talking about Rumble. Here's another little factoid that you're going to love. Do you know who helped facilitate and took Rumble public?
No.
Your boy Lutnick. He did the IPO for Rumble. Not that matters. That matters at all. But I'm just saying it's a small world. As you go up, it's a very, very small world.
Oh, yeah. No, it's the 5 people with all the billions of dollars, including Oprah. All right. Well, we probably better get off of here because we've crossed the 2-hour mark. And poor people who are on here, God love you. Mwah, mwah, staying with us for 2 hours. All right. We will have on Friday, we have a really interesting show. We have an attorney. He's in the Hughes County area. His name's John Baca. And he has, we're talking about tax credits and all that kind of stuff. We talked about that with Chad today, and where the wind energy, right? And all the green people get their money. They get them from us, right? He found there's a conservation easement mitigation tax credit. So if you do something bad to your property, like the snail darter, remember the snail darter in California, you have to turn around and pay the government for that, for screwing up snail darter territory or whatever. And he said what he's found is that there are a lot of people making a lot of money off of this and scamming the government. I know that's shocking because, government money, nothing bad ever happens to that, because there's so much accountability and people are very careful with government money because, they treat it like their own and all. So I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation with John Baca. So please tune in on Friday. I'll have Rumble fixed by then. And hopefully have yelled at people at Rumble to fix the problem by then. And anything else before we get off of here?
No, that's it.
Well, you did a great job explaining all of that. And I think, we're still going to have to talk about universal school choice like we did, last week. People don't get how bad it is. I mean, the government needs to stay out of stuff, and people need to do things for themselves. I know that today that's a bizarre concept, but that doesn't make it any less true. So, got to do that. Working on being self-sufficient, no government. All right. Thank you all for joining us today. It was a great audience. Thank you so much for all the comments and participation. I'm sure Chad appreciated that.
Yeah.
Knowing that there were people out there paying attention to what he was saying. So, because he's, been out there trying to tackle the legislature on this issue. So make sure you like and share and pass on. Not you passing on, but I mean, send the video to other people. That's what I meant. Okay. All right. Well, good to see everybody. And thanks again, Michael. We really appreciate you too, and appreciate our viewers. And we'll see you again on Friday morning at 9 o'clock. Thank